Okay, welcome back. We're in class. We're going to attempt to tackle questions 16 through 19 on prep test 78 in logical reasoning. Question 16, the issue is which one of the following, if true, would most help to explain the babbler's strange behaviors? So in terms of most helps explain, you can approach that as you're going to like support an explanation that's offered. Perhaps you can view it as a paradox because it's something that needs explaining. But let's see what we have here. Babblers. A bird species lives in large cooperative groups. Each member attempts to defend the group by sounding a loud bark-like call when it spots a predator, inciting the others to bark too. Okay, I got it. Babblers, however, are extremely well camouflaged and could usually feed safely unnoticed by predators. So they should just mind their own business. These predators indeed, generally become aware of the presence of the babblers only because of their shrill barks, which continue long after most members of the group have been able to take cover, and which signal the group's approximate location to the predators. So for sure, that I see that as a paradox. Like, why do they keep barking when the barking attracts the predators, permitting the predators to identify their location? And since it's being presented that way, there's got to be some benefit affiliated with the barking that has an effect on the predators, and that's what you're looking for. So, A, the babblers fly much faster than the predators they prey upon. Well, okay, that's nice, but that doesn't go to why are you attracting them? So it's great that you may be able to get away, but why are you inviting the danger by barking and bringing you to their attention? So no. B, babblers' predators are generally intimidated by a large number of babblers. Well, if the predators are intimidated by large numbers, and the barking goes from a single bark to a cacophony of barks, then it would be clear to a predator as a result of the barking that there are a large number of babblers there, and that might get them to stay away. So that would be an explanation. C, there is more than one type of predator that preys on babblers. That doesn't help at all. Again, it's why are you barking? You see, B goes to why we're barking. We're barking because it telescopes there are a lot of us. The C doesn't do that. D, predators have very good eyesight but relatively weak hearing. Well, that hardly helps. They have relatively weak hearing. You don't want to assist it. And E, animals that live in close proximity to babblers are also preyed upon by the predators that prey upon the babblers. Well, again, that's not explaining why are you bringing yourself to their attention. So the answer there is 16 is B for Brutus. Question number 17. The claim that there is a warm sea beneath Europa's icy surface figures in the argument in which one of the following ways. So this is, what is the role in the argument of this claim? So I have a slash mark after underneath, slash mark at the surface, and I'm ready. Photographs show an area of Europa, a moon of Jupiter, where the icy surface appears to have buckled as a result of turbulent water moving underneath. Okay, so that's a descriptive sort of thing, fact. This photographic evidence indicates that there is a warm sea beneath Europa's icy surface. You stop for a second. So the second sentence tells you the first sentence was evidence. A second sentence tells you that that evidence indicates something. So the second sentence, the information in the second sentence, is where the first sentence was designed to end up. So right now you'd say the second sentence is a conclusion that the evidence indicates that we have now concluded that there is a warm sea under the surface. Where do we go from there? The presence of such a sea is thought by scientists to be a primary factor in the development of early life, so there is reason to believe there may be life on Europa. And the second sentence now becomes a subordinate conclusion. Now becomes, you're using the fact that that we now believe that there's a warm sea there to serve that the presence of the sea is thought to be a primary factor in the early development of life, and therefore, based on that, there is reason to believe that there may be life on Europa. So the main conclusion is there is life on Europa. The information we've been directed to about the warm sea beneath it is evidence that's in support of that conclusion, but in its original form, really, it was a conclusion at some point, and then it became a subordinate conclusion. So I'm looking for that. A. It is a subsidiary conclusion used by the argument to support its overall conclusion. And, you know, that's the answer, and you got to pick it and get out of there. B. It is the overall conclusion. It is not the overall. The overall conclusion of this is there may be life on Europa. C. It is used to discredit a theory that the argument disputes. Help me out on that one. It is in fact used to support. It's supporting, all this argument is moving in one direction, supporting the conclusion that there may be life in Europa as a result of the warm water underneath, as a result of the photograph, in consequence of you had the photographic evidence, you had the warm water, and you had the possibility of life. D. It is the only consideration presented in support of the argument's overall conclusion. Well, no, the first sentence is part of that consideration. The photographic evidence is part of that consideration. E. It is presented as support for a subsidiary conclusion drawn in the argument. That has it backwards. It is the subsidiary argument used in support of the argument's main conclusion. So 17, the answer is A for Augustus. 18. Which one of the following most accurately describes the overall conclusion drawn in the argument? So again, you're expecting a battle here. I mean, likely having been assigned to number 18, its level of difficulty will be somewhat more elevated. Let's take a look. Slash mark after lucky, slash mark after where. So again, all I'm looking for is what is being explained, and when I'm reading the explaining is not the conclusion. So let's see what we have here. For consumers, the most enjoyable emotional experience garnered from shopping is feeling lucky. Okay, you could do anything you want. If you wanted to make that the conclusion, the rest of this would explain that. If it's going to build on that, we'll soon know. But we're told that that's our most enjoyable emotional experience is feeling lucky. Next sentence. Retailers use this fact. So they're telling you in the second sentence, the first sentence was a fact, not a conclusion. All right. So retailers use this fact to their advantage. Okay, how so? Well, we don't know that, because then it says, but too often they resort to using advertised price cuts to promote their wares. Okay, so now we're told in the second sentence that the retailers use the fact that consumers want to feel lucky. They use that fact to their advantage, but all too often they resort to using advertised price cuts to promote their wares. So right now the conclusion to me is that second sentence, that they do use it to their advantage. The problem is it may not be to their advantage, because all too often the consumers resort to, the merchants resort to using advertised price cuts to promote their wares. So let's see what's next. Promotion of this sort might make bargain-minded consumers feel lucky. Okay, so that does work, but they can cut into profit margins and undermine customer loyalty. And the purpose of the third sentence is to explain the second sentence. The second sentence is basically saying that the price cuts are over-advertised, and they're not a good thing on balance. And then that third sentence is explaining it. So that's going to be, the answer is going to be that second sentence. So A, feeling lucky is the most enjoyable emotional experience garnered from shopping. No, we told in the second sentence that was a fact. B, retailers take advantage of the fact that shoppers enjoy feeling lucky. That is the first clause in the conclusion, but it goes on to say, well, they do take advantage of that, there's a problem. And the problem is the conclusion. There were consequences of it, and that's what's being explained in the third sentence. C, advertised price cuts are overused as a means of gaining retail sales. That is correct. That is what the third sentence seeks to explain. D, using advertised price cuts to promote retail products reduces profit margin and undermines customer loyalty. Well, you know, it may do that, but it's not going to the conclusion, which is it's their overuse that's the problem, not that they reduce margins and undermine loyalty, but it's their overuse that's the problem here. And E says, making customers feel lucky is usually not a good formula for retail success, and that's not, again, you know, choice D is explaining the argument's conclusion. Choice D is the evidence in support of the conclusion that that's what the overuse brings. Choice E is simply citing a fact that is used as evidence in support of the argument's main conclusion and is not the argument's main conclusion. So the answer there is C for Caligula. Question number 19. The jurist claimed that it is important to guarantee that lawbreaking does not give lawbreakers an unfair advantage over law abiders. So it's a big chunk there. Functions in the argument in which one of the following ways. So this is the role in the argument. And let's see what we have here. Slash mark after the word abiders, and that's it. Okay, here's what the jurist says. To ensure that a legal system remains just, it is important to guarantee that lawbreaking does not give lawbreakers an unfair advantage over law abiders. Okay, and that's what we've been directed to. So it's a statement saying, if we're going to ensure a legal system, we need this condition in place, right? And this condition in place is you don't give an advantage to lawbreakers over law abiders. It sounds like a principle to me, right? Okay. But you're saying you got to have this in place, right? We're not going to advantage lawbreakers over law abiders if we want a just system. Next sentence. Thus. So you're saying I'm done, which means that is now the predicate. What you read in advance is basically the justification for what's coming because of what I just said. Thus, notwithstanding any other goals that criminal punishment may serve, it should certainly attempt to ensure that criminal wrongdoing remains profitless. So that's the argument's conclusion, that criminal wrongdoing should remain profitless. It's the result of that first sentence where you say that that's how you get to a just system. A just legal system requires that law breakers do not receive advantages over law people who abide by the law. Okay, so the role in there is basically it's introduced as something upon which the argument's final conclusion rests. So, I mean, I'm seeing really more of it as that language being a principle. But even if you didn't come up with the word principle, the conclusion that it should certainly attempt to ensure that criminal wrongdoing remains profitless. That conclusion, that bedrock of that conclusion, is the prior statement. Okay, A. So, with respect to the clause in question, it states a condition that, if fulfilled, will ensure that a legal system remains just. No, it doesn't ensure it. It's got to be there, but it doesn't ensure it. B. It expresses a principle that is offered as support for the conclusion. Yeah, no, again, by all means, that's the answer. If you hesitate because you see, they use the word principle, you may have thought it was a premise, that's fine, keep reading, but the big picture there is, it's clear its role in the argument is to support the argument's main conclusion. So let's look and see what C says. C says it is a conclusion, for which the only support offered is the claim that the legal system serves multiple goals. Well, no, one, it's not the conclusion, and two, it doesn't, that statement does not rest on that, that the legal system serves multiple goals. That does. D, it is a premise presented as support for the claim that the most important goal of criminal punishment is to ensure that criminal wrongdoing remains profitless. So let's look at that one again. It is a premise presented as support for the claim that, what is this most important goal? Where did this most important goal come in? So there's nothing in here about this being the most important goal. And so that's not the answer, because it's nowhere in this to say that it is most important. It exceeds any other goal in importance. And E, it is presented as refuting an argument that criminal punishment has goals other than guaranteeing that law breaking remains profitless. Beats me. The answer is no. That's not the role in the argument. It's certainly not refuting the argument. It is the bedrock of the argument. So the answer to number 19 is B for Brutus, and there were questions 16 through 19 on exam 70.